Welcome to the Peaceful Empowerment Works show. We are live on WGSN-DB Going Solar Network. I am your co-host, Judy Forder, and I am here with my co-host in peace, Miss
Kris Burke.
Real quick, if you have been enjoying our show, please like, comment, and share to help us reach a wider audience. And we have been advised to let you know that nothing discussed today constitutes legal, financial, or medical advice. Should you seek legal, financial, or medical advice, consult a professional in that specific field directly. And today's topic, uncovering the hidden gems of depression.
We're going to have so much fun talking about depression today.
Just a disclaimer for us, Kris has a demented vision on what fun can be sometimes.
True. It's true. We actually have, the students actually call it Kris fun.
It's always good on the end, but sometimes it's a little choppy in the middle.
It's true. Hey, personal, professional development can be a little choppy, right? Because we're trying to dig up what's not working and replace it with architecture for what will work. And, that's a process that involves a little bit of discomfort. But to me, because I know of the payoff on the other end, I get really excited about let's do this because we can, right? Just the idea that it's possible just lights me up.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And any of the students in our class, once they understood what Kris fun could be, Kris would say, "This is going to be fun." And we'd be like, "Kris fun or fun?" But yes, we all have learned that it's totally worth it. No matter what we go through, it's worth it on the other end because things are always brighter, lighter, and better. So we introduced to you the topic of depression.
Yes. Yeah, and the hidden gems in depression. I think most of us think of depression as being sort of like a medical condition, that it's a state where something is wrong. And so we're actually going to be talking about depression from a different standpoint, shocker. We're going to be talking about it from the standpoint of what it tells us about where we're at mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. So depression to us quite literally means that your life's force, that energy that sparks you and gives you the power and energy to go through your day, which then at night, you feel that it's depleted. We go to sleep, we wake up in the morning, we've got more, we're recharged. That energy during depression, really when we say we're depressed, what we're saying is, gee, it feels like my energy isn't as abundant as normal as what I'm used to. And so depression to us quite literally means that it's been, your energy force has been depressed, that you're carrying, pain or struggle, or maybe even going into a new phase, right? So you might be wrapping up one chapter and about to open a new one. And so that normal energy pace, what you consider to be normal, is just temporarily in a dip.
Yes. So we always talk here from experience.
Mm-hmm.
So can you share a little bit about your experiences with depression? And when did you realize there were gems to be found in a state of depression?
It was actually after, or let me just talk about that, the situation I talk about all the time, which is the one where I was absolutely at my wit's end. And I thought, I've been trying for all these years, working so hard to try to get to a place where I'm content in my life, where I was looking for peace. I didn't know it at the time. And no matter what I did, it seemed like, I'd get this little assembly together over here and another part of my life would fall apart, and I'd run over there and I'd go to fix that one, and then something else would fall apart. So it was just like busy, racing, frantic, stressful. And one day I just realized I don't care to do this anymore. And as I thought back over my life, I realized that I literally did not know how to create the experience that I was longing for.
And
It
you realize you were depressed. Would you have identified yourself as depressed?
um no, and that was actually where how I started on talking about this, is that it wasn't really until after, when I experienced that peace, when that peace came over me, that I realized, oh, I've been feeling terrible. Right? I didn't, because I had no comparison. The depression had been this gradual accumulation throughout the
Mhm.
course of my life. And even though I would have periods of excitement, like I would get excited over the idea that something was going to happen that was going to change, make my life better. And sometimes things did happen, right? I would get married, I had children, there were things that new jobs. um, there were things that would happen, and I would think, oh, this is going to make for a completely better experience. But my day-to-day experience inside my skin of being me didn't get better. And as time went on and I accumulated more examples or more evidence, that my life wasn't working the way it should, and there must be something wrong with me, right? Which we always conclude. As I gathered more evidence, my day to day level of energy got lower and lower because I was carrying a heavier emotional burden. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you explained it gradually. It's almost like it sneaks up on you. At least,
Hmm.
and that was my experience too. Because yes, you look up the definition of depression, and you look up the symptoms, and one of the symptoms was experiencing guilt. Well, I'm thinking I've experienced guilt my entire life.
Yes. Yes.
So yes, it's these things that build, and then you convince yourself that once I can get this done, then I can be happy. Once I do this, then I can be happy. Once I do
Right.
that, then I can be happy. And I lived that way for a long time.
Hmm.
And then my mother died. So then depression and grief like merged together and morphed and made this thing. And it was
Yeah.
funny because I was talking to my daughter, about the topic of today's show being depression. And she's like, Mom, were you ever depressed? And I was like, well, when I lost your grandmother. And she said, what did you do about it? I said, well, I drank for 5 years
Right.
before I would admit that there was an issue.
Right.
And she looked at me and laughed and said, don't lead off with that story, Mom.
Right.
But yeah, when that all morphed together, I chalked everything up as grief. Well,
Yeah.
that's that's how I'm dealing with this. And
Right.
when I wasn't a drink until you black out kind of person, but I was a drink, laugh, and have fun. It was like when I would reach that space of comfortable, then I could allow myself to feel some type of joy,
Yeah.
which alcohol's a depressant, so none of that makes logical sense.
Right. No, it doesn't.
No.
No,
And
and as you know, I had the same experience with using alcohol to try to escape my. Mm,
yeah. And people use different things. Some people use food, some people use sex, some people, you know, we touched on addiction a little bit here and there.
yeah.
It's to get away from, stop feeling, to, numb. And
Hmm.
that's where I was. And I was numb for so long I didn't even realize I was numb.
Yeah, and that's there you have it, right there. Depression, the suppression of what would be natural energy if you loved yourself and your life. Right? And when we say loved yourself, I just felt people in the audience go, "Ugh, love myself." Like, "Oh." And then there are those people who will say, like I used to say, "What? I love myself." Right? In a sort of defensive, like tight way. Love yourself like without any condition.
Unconditional.
Absolutely unconditional. I love myself on the days that I want to watch old reruns and eat popcorn. And I love myself on the days when I feel like I just, conquered the world, my world.
Yeah.
Right. So that kind of unconditional love, very few of us have developed it because it exists in the absence of all of the hard things that we've talked about. Ah, we have a question.
I've heard depression can be caused by anger at self for not doing what was needed for you.
Yeah.
Kris used that word content. Thank you, Margaret, for your comment. Kris used that word content.
Hi,
And
Shannon.
that's when we settle for what's good enough.
Right.
Good enough. And, we convince ourselves for many different reasons that whatever experience we're having, well, it's good enough. I
Right.
don't deserve anything better than this.
Right.
And when you put yourself in that space, you're just like Kris was saying, you're depression pushing down those emotions that make you believe that you deserve something more.
Yeah. And even know, right? In fact, can we have our map up, please? Thank you so much. So right when we're on the right hand side of this map, when we're in zone 3 or zone 4, we are at peace with ourselves. We naturally feel inspired. We feel guided. We feel interested. Oh, that's interesting. We're curious, right? We're open. It's like, oh, that's really interesting. I'm going to go explore that. I'm going to go check it out. We're a little bit adventurous, right? When we're on, that's that natural flow coming through you. It's go check out a 2-year-old and watch them for the day. There it is. That's you can see that their 2-year-old isn't bored. There's a whole world to explore, and they know in them each moment what is worth exploring, or when they need to take a break and recharge. And so, on this left side of our map, those are all of the emotions that, frankly, when we accumulate them, when we store them, when they don't just process through, but we actually grab onto them and we tell ourselves we identify with it. We identify with the grief of losing a parent, or we identify with the shame of having grown up, um, in poverty, or certainly in my community, that's pretty common. In communities all over the world, that's pretty common. So with those emotions, when we're carrying them, they're actually filtering out those natural emotions that are happening over on the right hand side. So and when enough of those build up, you just imagine it's literally pushing down on that energy that would just guide us to having a life that we love with people that we enjoy and appreciate and trust and respect. Right?
Yes. Yes. And for those people that may be new to the show, talking about the map, the realms of experience, zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and zone 4. And the left side of the map has to do with your instincts and intellect. And I know like I said, I didn't even realize how numb I had become. And I chalked everything up to grief. And that's what I did. I had a fear of everything. I lost my mother. So you lose her, it's like my grounding rock was gone.
Yeah.
So that fear creeps in. And then, I was filled with rage. We've talked about that before. But it wasn't until it was like I had a nice house. I had a partner who loved me. I had a daughter. I never thought I was going to be a mother. And here I had this beautiful daughter. And I was working part time. And, all these things that I finally woke up and was like, I have plenty of things in my life to be happy about. My siblings and we got even closer after my mother died. So I started to realize things didn't make sense.
Mhm.
Things just aren't making sense. And honestly, for me, what woke me up is I went for an energy session. I got Reiki for the first time. I went there, of course, because I had to experience it before I could recommend it to my little sister. And little did I know it was going to change my life.
Right.
Because it just opened my eyes. And for the first time since I could remember, I felt hope.
Yeah.
I felt hope. So I'm sorry. I talked through Laura Turner's comment.
Yeah, not a problem. So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So sure. I was going to say, speaking of siblings, hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
Judy. So I drank a lot too, Laura says. Things got so heavy that I knew I needed to do something different, but was not sure what. I went to therapy and got some life tools. Slowly, the light started coming back. Yeah.
Yeah, Laura was willing to reach for help um, before I was.
Yeah.
So she was a good role model for me.
Yeah. Well, we all, I mean, we do inspire one another, don't we?
Hmm.
We watch one another. We're always observing at different levels, and they say, what is it? 7% of our communication is actually verbal, and 93% of is all other layers of communication, body language, facial expression, but also energy. We're reading one another. We're feeling what's going on with somebody. You know how sometimes you spend time with somebody and you walk away and you say, I don't know, something seemed off,
Hmm.
right? That's what I'm talking about. That we're reading people all the time. Or you walk into a room and someone's got their back to you and you immediately go, uh-oh, right? You obviously weren't reading body language or facial expression, but you were reading the energy of this person's in a bad mood or this person's in grief or whatever it is. But you knew immediately that you walked into the environment where somebody's energy was significantly different than yours and it didn't make you happy. It didn't feel good, right?
Something's not right.
Yeah, I should leave.
And that we call intuition.
Yes,
That's
we
our
do.
and we strongly encourage you to trust your intuition.
We do. In fact, that's such a great segue into we want to talk about the hidden gems, right? And one of the hidden gems in depression actually is that it is your intuition that alerts you to things, that lets you know what's going on beneath the surface. Because how many of us really feel safe enough, or were raised in such a way that we would go around and really say the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, we tend to give people little snippets of information, and it's very carefully selected. And so we're always getting just a little pieces of people. And so it's that intuition that really tells us what's going on underneath, kind of from a bigger picture perspective,
Mhm.
and what we can do with that. And when we are depressed and we've got all of these layers of shame and guilt and, certain situations that happened, feelings of hopelessness and, what's the point, and grief and all of that, it becomes very difficult to hear our intuition, which is so subtle. And just like in us, our intuition is always there, but it's happening under the surface. It's that subtle, silent part of us that we have to really tune into. And if we've got all of these other emotions raging and roaring in us, it's very difficult to hear that sweet little whisper that's saying, if you go right this time, it won't be so bad.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, and I think we talked a little bit about the last show about zone 1 and zone 2 being very ego driven.
Hmm.
And ego's loud. Ego's that loud friend at the party that wants everybody's attention.
Yeah. Yes.
And and your intuition, inspiration, soul sits back and just waits
Mhm.
for that moment of peace and
Right.
whispers.
Yeah.
So it's about getting you. That's why Kris and I talk about the Peaceful Empowerment Works show. If you can find those few seconds of peace, it gives you the opportunity to hear your intuition.
Yes.
So when
Absolutely.
I say depression is the body's way of letting you know something in your life is not working. A lot in your life isn't working for you anymore.
Hmm.
And I know we've talked a lot about with everything going on in the world and the energetic shifts, people are waking up to the things that used to work for them aren't working anymore. So now what?
Yeah. Yeah. And fortunately, we have depression when we start to feel heavier, lower, just like we don't have the energy for things. That's just telling us that where we are right now isn't working. It's just information. Where you are right now isn't working. And so it's time for some self assessment. So it could be that you're just about one chapter of your life is just naturally, or one chapter of the collective, we might say, is naturally winding down. And just like in the winter, when everything life looks like it disappears in the winter, but it doesn't. It just goes into a hibernation mode. It goes into a quiet phase, right? Rebuilding phase. So when spring comes back around, everything just bursts forth. So depression can be just a natural phase where you're slowing down and kind of recalibrating for a new phase that's going to happen. And it can also be, there's something in your life that you're resisting, or something is trying to happen, or something is happening that you're resisting and getting in your own way. And so depression is saying, hey, you're squeezing out your life force here. You might want to look at that. Either way, it's good news because it's good information.
Hi, Shannon. Thank you for watching live. She said that gives me such hope.
Oh, wonderful, Shannon.
Excellent. Yes, it does. I mean, your body is constantly talking to you. And we talk a lot about tapping into your intuition and trusting your intuition. Well, you can create and cultivate a relationship with your body as well. The body speaks. It will tell you exactly what it needs. And, people that experience, I have one client that just physical pain is unbearable. And she is finally realizing that it's her body screaming at her that changes need to be made.
Yes.
And when we ask for the guidance will come. Guidance will come. And yeah, when we come back from the break, I would like to address some things that my mother went through when she first got sick.
Wonderful.
We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm John Thomas. I want to share with you a professional products and services directory we call Going Solo Directory. And you need to check this out. If you want exposure to your business or are seeking professional product or services, this directory has it all. And that membership, for the many special features, you get the benefit of a worldwide exposure with a 40-minute video interview on an international business show showcase. All this for just one low annual fee. For more information, contact GoingSoloDirectory.com.
And we are back live on, this is the Peaceful Empowerment Work Show, live on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network. I am your co-host, Judy Forder, and I'm here with Kris Burke. We are the co-founders of Masterful U. And we would like to remind you that nothing discussed today contributes legal, financial, or medical advice. Constitutes, my apologies. Should you seek legal, financial, or medical advice, consult a professional in that specific field directly. So before break, we are talking about the uncovering the hidden gems in depression. And something I wanted to address that came up when I was thinking about the show was the fact that, and I'm not dissing the medical profession at all, but there needs to be awareness to this. My mother had colon cancer, went through fighting colon cancer, had the bag, had reversal surgery, came through it great. And then all of a sudden she didn't know the name of our dog. And when my dad started asking her, the name of your children, she couldn't answer. So he took her to the hospital. They admit her. Her brain had swollen. They had no idea what was going on. And I don't even remember how long she was in the hospital. 3, 4, 5 days a week. I don't know. But they had no diagnosis. And they were ready to send her home, saying that she had a nervous breakdown as a result of her battling cancer. Yes. And if it wasn't for an intern that talked to my father and said, just give me a little bit more time. I'm putting some things together. Let me see. He diagnosed her with lupus. And if it wasn't for him, we would have taken her home and probably medicated her and said, it was a nervous breakdown. And all of us were like, no, that doesn't feel right. That's not her. That's not the way she is. She's a strong woman. She did great getting through the cancer. Why would she break down now? It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
So thank goodness this intern listened to us.
Yeah.
And he was searching. Then fast forward to my sister. She gets sick. Doctors can't figure out what's going on. The first thing they want to do is put her on antidepressants.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness she was strong enough. And as sick as she was is a miracle. As she was strong enough to say, no, I am not depressed. There is something wrong with me.
Yeah.
That's why, when we said you can create a relationship with your body speaks to you. She trusted her body.
Mm-hmm.
It took her years. She finally got a diagnosis, but it took her years of telling doctors, no, I will not take a pill. This is not depression.
Right. And yeah, and that's so powerful, because even if it were depression,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think in our society, we have such a tendency to diagnose problems and then paste solutions on, sell a solution. Oh, you've got a problem. If it's in this box, here's a solution. And what we're really advocating is there are natural processes that are at work inside of us and outside of us all the time. We do not understand all of those. What we know is that if we align ourselves with them, if we question them instead of trying to stop them or fix them or shut them down, that we become wiser. We become more able to access more levels of ourselves, more of that infinite intelligence that is available to all of us right here in our heart centers. We become more able to access that because we're open to it. Because we start saying, what's going on with me? Is this depression? Is there something physically going on? And as we know, because of the work that we do for such a long time, if there's something going on mentally, it's affecting you emotionally, physically, and spiritually, and vice versa, right? Every which way. Like they're all connected. There's no such thing as you've had a mental problem and there's nothing going on emotionally, physically, and spiritually, or vice versa. If you've got because it's all it's all connected, it's all interworking. So when one thing moves, everything else has to adjust. It's just the way, I won't get into the geometry, platonic solids, all of that stuff. I really want to. Judy's like, please, Kris, don't do that. That's too much Kris fun.
Not ready for that.
Yeah, too much Kris fun. But this is stuff that's been talked about for thousands of years, is my point.
Yes.
That's really just my point, is that what we see in the outside world, it looks like everything is separate. But really through our working, we can see that when we really pay attention to our emotions, that and we ask questions instead of trying to change them, and we make peace with our emotions and we allow them to process through, that the other parts of our lives and experiences start to improve, which we just say is evidence of, oh, yeah, connected.
Yes. And that's why I have found the map so helpful. We talked about it. I'm sure we talked about it last week. But when we can identify what it is we're feeling, and we can identify it as a zone 1 instinct. Okay, then we know we're in fight or flight. Why are we there?
Right.
And it's about pausing and
Hmm.
allowing yourself those few seconds of peace so that you can start to question. Because I know when I'm in that state of overwhelm, that questions are the last thing coming to mind.
Right.
I'm in that storm, I'm part of that tornado. I'm not sitting in the eye watching it as an observer. I'm in it.
Right.
And I don't know whether to shit or get. It's terrible.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's a terrible way to feel. Out of control, overwhelmed. You can't see the light of day. You don't know which way is up, which way is down.
Right.
So if you can just breathe and think, just pause for a moment. Help me find this peace.
Hmm.
And Kris has taught us a wonderful technique. I don't know if you would like to introduce that now. Just about how to quiet your mind and get yourself focused. And Laura says, knowing the zones helps calm me once I start breaking things down.
Yeah. Yeah. And even, thank you, Laura. And even depression, like when we're talking about depression, we're really talking about the third step next to zone 1. It's that feeling of apathy, hopelessness. That's when we say I feel depressed. We feel like, what's the point? Right? It's that, like, I can put energy, I could muster up the energy to willpower through whatever it is that we're trying to do, to try to force something to happen, to try to force change. Right? But the message here is that you have these higher aspects of yourselves that just have tremendous power. When we're on the left hand side of the map, our ego is really trying to force change. When we connect with our intuition and inspiration, change happens kind of, and it seems like of its own volition. The person that you need to talk to, the right person you need to talk to, shows up. You happen to tune into the right radio station, right? So you're here listening to this webcast and you hear exactly the thing that you've been puzzling over. Those kinds of things start happening. We're not making those happen, right? You can't force those things to happen. But if we if we loosen up on the need to force, if we let go of the need to try to control the universe, which is what, we've all kind of been trained, like, you need to be in control of everything, which, it doesn't work, right? So no wonder we end up depressed, because we exhaust ourselves trying to do the impossible. So if we can just, when we recognize, wow, I'm in zone 1 right now, I'm feeling hopeless, I'm feeling apathy, we can let go a little bit and make a little space. And just like Judy said, ask ourselves, is there something else in me? Is there peace in me? Is there another way that I could see this? The answer will come if we can hold space for it, because that's how the intuition and the inspiration works. You ask a question, it gets answered. Right? And it's very hard to be depressed, frankly, when you start to realize that the entire universe is talking to you,
And working.
communicating.
Yes, and
Yeah.
working for you.
Yes.
That was the biggest aha for me. I'm not
Mm.
in this alone.
Right.
Let alone do I have my physical support tribe. You know, the universe is in full support of doing whatever it takes for us to be happy and joyful and filled
Mhm.
with love,
Yeah.
because that's what this experience is all about, finding
Mhm.
that again.
Mhm.
As humans, we have lost it,
Yeah.
and the search is on. Search is on, and the universe is in full support. And I like to tell my clients, it's working feverishly behind the scenes. We don't know all the details. We don't understand what is aligning for us
Right.
in order for us to have an experience that's going to shift and help change our lives.
Absolutely. And another one of the gems in depression, depression happens for you. Nothing happens that does not ultimately serve you. If we can get ourselves into that questioning frame of mind and say, how does this help me? What does this tell me? What does this show me that I need to know about myself so that I can heal? So that I can let go of my pain. I can let go of the idea that I need to struggle. and all of the reasons why I think struggling is what everybody needs to do.
Yes. And going back to the forcing, I mean, when you're trying to force something, that's creating conflict.
Right.
And when you're creating conflict, a teacher of mine early on would say, you can't solve a situation or heal a situation in the same energy in which it's created.
Right.
And as long as you're forcing, there's conflict. There's no healing in conflict.
No.
That's why you have to open the door to peace.
Yeah, absolutely. And the conflict always ends up being a belief that we have, or at least in my experience and working with other people, the conflict has always turned out to be a belief that I held, usually connected to pain, that was in conflict with what my intuition knew to be true. Right? So my intuition is saying, this is true. This is possible. Take this step. And my belief would be saying, well, no, that would never work. That's not realistic. That's not practical. I need evidence. I need a map. I need, somebody from the divine realms to sign here on the dotted line and give me a guarantee. Because, so far in my life, I haven't experienced what you're suggesting, which is that my heart could actually dance with joy in the life that I'm living. Right. So we want that guarantee first. And what the universe is trying to demonstrate to us is, if we could let go of all of the beliefs about how we can't, it just would happen. It does happen. Right. Yeah.
It unfolds for us.
Right.
When we create that place of peace within us, then peace is what we attract.
Mm-hmm.
When we can love ourselves unconditionally, we attract people that love us unconditionally.
Yes.
Whatever doesn't vibrate at that frequency falls away. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's difficult to say goodbye. But
sometimes until just like with depression, right? It's hindsight really is 2020. Mm-hmm. In the midst of it, when we're letting go of maybe it's a friendship or a partnership or whatever it is that we're letting go of, maybe we're letting go of an idea that something was going to make our lives better and it didn't. Whenever we're letting go of something, we're actually letting go of a long held belief about ourselves and about how the world works. So there's a grieving that happens. That can be a painful thing, but it's actually the internal letting go that's painful, because the outside thing that represents that internal belief, usually there's relief associated with that. I mean, we don't say goodbye unless it's really time to say goodbye, and this is painful now, right? It's become just, this isn't working. We're banging our heads against the wall. And we say goodbye to the relationship, and we might actually feel like, oh, thank God, that feels better. And yet we're left with this feeling of sadness. And that's usually the grieving over, I really thought the world worked that way, or I really thought this situation was going to work and it didn't. And now I'm going to grieve the idea, not the person, because the reality is the person wasn't working. If that relationship with that person had been working for both of us, which is how I define a relationship working, then we'd still be in it. Mm-hmm. Right. So the reality was the relationship wasn't working, but there was still this belief that, but only if it could, if we could only do the right thing or say the right thing, it could be so fantastic. And that idea of what it could be if things were different wants to argue with the reality of, but things aren't different. They are the way it is, and it isn't working. Right. Exactly. That's the conflict. So the point is, the conflict is your own arguing with reality.
Yes. And what we have found is, when you find peace within yourself, you allow people, you show up differently, and that allows other people to show up differently.
Yes.
And that's a big thing to remember. As you start to focus on the work within you, you show up in your life different. Mm-hmm. And it opens the door for people around you to show up differently as well.
It does.
Let that sink in.
Yeah. It is true. There is no such thing as a person, any idea we have about the people in our lives, that's based on, look at Shannon. Ugh. Yeah, we know, Shannon. That's hitting me, she says. Yeah, that's it. We have these ideas about the people in our lives, and we have kind of a, a concept or an image of what that person is like. Well, the truth is that's what that person is like when we are the way we are like.
Mhm.
But when we change the way we are with that person, they have to change because the how they're showing up energetically, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually only works when we're in a certain place, when we're showing up in a certain way. And when we show up differently, it literally won't work with them.
Jennifer Clark says you need to let go of the potential and allow yourself to see what actually is. Amen. The truth will set you free,
It
even if it's
will.
ugly, uncomfortable truth. It's
Yeah.
difficult, but it will set you free.
Yes. And let's talk about that for a minute because it ties in with what Shannon said. Like the ugliness is this idea that our idea of what should be is better than reality, is better than what is. And actually, sometimes, well, I've found reality always has better ideas than I do because, well, it has access to infinite intelligence, whereas I tend to have just access to, the ego has access to just a single lifetime,
Yeah.
having drawn the particular conclusions that I drew. So when we look at something and we say, "Oh no, this relationship is falling apart," if you remember when you go to zone 3 or 4 and you zoom out, intuition, inspiration, that source of intelligence is saying, "Oh, good, we can clear this out so that the thing they really want that will really light their heart up can come on stage." But it can't come in while we're carrying all of that pain and struggle. It can't, those two things can't exist at the same time. So whatever is in our life making us aware of our struggle and pain, that is a gift, including our depression, because it tells us, wow, I'm holding on to emotions that are causing struggle and pain. And when I clear those emotions out, when I say I'm willing to let go of my pain and struggle, now the beautiful thing that's just around the bend can whoosh into your life.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that is a perfect place to wrap it up.
Yeah, it is. And it's 11:44, so that's pretty cool too.
So again, if you are enjoying what you're hearing, joining us on the Peaceful Empowerment Work show, please like, comment, and share, and subscribe. We want to thank everybody who commented and joined us for the live show today. That was exciting.
It was really exciting. And to remind you that there is a workshop at Masterful U, masterfulu.com. The workshop is on Monday night, July 10th from 7 to 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And Judy and I will be personally running the workshop. So we'd love to have you come and just get a taste of peace. These concepts that we're sharing, they're based on our own experiences, but it won't matter to you until it's your experience. And that's what this workshop is designed to do, is to give you that experience so it becomes real to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us. This was great.
It was great. Thank you as always, Judy. Yeah. Thanks,
We'll see you
everybody.
next week. Thank you.